2026. First item on our agenda this evening is roll call.
Raza?
Here.
Lancy?
Here.
Beck?
Here.
Malay?
Here.
Malone?
Here.
Wolf?
Here.
Solfa?
Here.
Barron?
Here.
Lehman?
Here.
Lohman?
Here.
Pieper?
Here.
Fehrenbach?
Here.
Anderson?
Here.
White?
Here.
Thank you. 14 present, none absent.
Thank you. Reminder, if you come up to use the mic tonight, make sure you can see the little green light on and hear yourself in the background so everybody that's watching can hear you. Item 3 is items to be removed, added, or changed. Do we have anything? Nope. Matters from the public for items not on the agenda. Is anybody here for that? Nope. And then we'll go right into the regular agenda, which is 5.1, discussion on e-mobility discussion and local regulation. Chief, we'll let you have it.
Thank you. So wanted to start off the discussion with just a presentation, a little bit of education on e-mobility, kind of a precursor for why we're having this conversation today. First, I think Council's very aware of the benefits of e-mobility. Reduces vehicle traffic and parking demand. It's a valid source of physical activity or exercise. Allows those with mobility issues, alternative transportation choices, and it reduces pollution. Despite the benefits, there are some safety concerns, and that's kind of the purpose of the discussion. It's also been a discussion that has been had in conjunction with the Batavia Active Transportation Commission. So some of the safety concerns that we're seeing is individuals operating the equipment in an unsafe manner, riding too close to pedestrians or in congested areas, specifically the downtown area, on sidewalks, by storefronts, things like that, disregarding traffic control devices. And there's also concerns for child riders, like a lack of proper safety gear, a lack of familiarity with rules of the road or understanding of the rules of the road, particularly with some of the higher powered e-bikes, and a lack of parental oversight for young riders. We've had incidents in town where some young riders have not stopped or pulled over when signaled by officers, and complaints of high-speed e-mobility devices on shared paths which cause dangerous conditions. Another cause of concern is that there is a growing list of unregulated vehicles or vehicles that aren't defined by state law. So e-bikes are pretty well defined by state law. We'll go over those definitions in a little bit. But I think the public at large lacks understanding of the difference between what is an e-bike and what other e-mobility devices are. So this can lead to purchases of unregulated or high-powered devices, and it can lead to the use of some of those high-powered devices on bike paths or on public roadways. The primary concern is those off-highway motorcycles or electric dirt bikes. We'll refer to them as e-motos. We have seen them used on sidewalks, roadways, and shared paths. Those electric motorcycles and mini motos are not defined in Illinois statute. They often exceed 750 watts. They may or may not have functional pedals. Those are often regulated by municipalities as motor vehicles, and clear local definitions are essential for enforcement. There's also enforcement challenges with any e-mobility regulation. We have limited resources to address the behavior. At a glance, it's definitely difficult to gauge rider age or what type of e-bike or what type of device somebody's riding on from afar. Difficult to gauge the speed that the rider is traveling at. Radar has limited effectiveness on those sorts of devices because of the relatively small mass. Dangerous driving behavior often occurs in obscure areas where enforcement's not really practical for us, and there's unclear state laws in many cases. So our goal, and this is kind of a joint goal with Batavia Active Transportation Commission, was to develop some safe, equitable, and enforceable regulations for the use of e-mobility devices within City of Batavia. This is not a goal to discourage or limit the opportunity for people to utilize e-mobility devices, but rather to ensure that they're doing so in a safe and responsible way. So the goals create regulations reflective of the community's priorities and provide an enforcement mechanism that removes unsafe behavior from state court to local prosecution. benefits a local prosecution. That's usually where we try most of our lower level crimes. The prosecutor may have more flexibility, and there's frequently lighter penalties. So one of the risks with regulation is I fully acknowledge there's a lot of different municipalities throughout the state, and a lot of them all have slightly different rules and regulations in place, as well as the state rules, which makes widespread adaptability challenging for riders and bystanders. So there is some rider and public confusion. Our goal in crafting an ordinance is to avoid that as best as possible. So we want to enact local regulation that's easy to understand, it's also easy to enforce, and that closely aligns with the existing state laws, because we don't want to have something completely outside the box. Just a little bit of education on e-bikes defined and what they are specifically. So a low-speed electric bicycle, one of the key distinctions is that it's equipped with fully operable pedals and an electric motor less than 750 watts. They're divided into 3 different classifications, 1, 2, and 3. Class 1 is motor assistance only when pedaling. The motor assistance stops when the bike reaches 20 miles an hour, and there's no age requirement in place. Class 2 allows you, again, to have motor assistance up to 20 miles an hour. It'll provide that assistance with or without pedaling. Again, no age requirement. And then Class 3 is motor assistance only when pedaling, but it does reach up, that motor will assist you up to speeds of 28 miles an hour. That is the only classification that has an age restriction. State restricts that to 16 plus, but there is not a driver's license required. In most cases, e-bikes are treated like bicycles under the Illinois traffic law. They are prohibited from sidewalks statewide. They are required to be labeled with their classification, their top assisted speed, the motor wattage. I believe 48 out of the 50 states have adopted these e-bike definitions, so these are pretty well established throughout the country. Helmets and insurance are not required, and legally e-bikes may only be sold in adult sizes. So again, the big distinction here is operable pedals. Pedals, not pegs, is kind of a catchy way to remember it. So all other devices, regardless of how they're ridden upon, are not e-bikes according to Illinois law. Specifically looking at those e-motos, those off-highway motorcycles, electric dirt bikes, and other. We'll go into a bit of a description or definition of what those are. So the e-moto concerns, and that we're seeing more and more of, these are vehicles that are capable of exceeding 20 miles an hour on motorized propulsion alone when the throttle's engaged. So the rider does not have to do any pedaling. It may or may not have pedals. They're often, we're seeing devices with pedals to kind of confuse law enforcement, but with the throttle alone, the device can still go over 20 miles an hour. A lot of times they can exceed 20 miles an hour by a significant amount, 35, 40 miles an hour. You're seeing some of these devices out there. They are sold online regularly. They're often falsely advertised as e-bikes, which I think adds to the confusion. So there is public confusion out there with what qualifies as an e-bike. They're not currently regulated. I know that the state is working on regulations, and they're working with Ride Illinois, as I touched on last week. I've waited for the state to solve problems before. It hasn't worked out well sometimes, so that's why we think it's an appropriate time to address this with local ordinance at this time. The state would generally classify these devices as motor-driven cycles, which, if so classified, those are subject to the license and registration requirements of a motor vehicle. The operators could be cited up to, including traffic misdemeanors without appropriate local ordinances in place. And frankly, I think that's a pretty harsh penalty at times when you consider that a lot of times these are kids who don't really understand their parents bought them an e-bike as far as they're concerned, and they're out there riding their e-bike. So clear local definitions are essential for enforcement and prosecution. It would allow us another tool in the tool bag, or a mechanism to kind of provide both that enforcement but also that educational component for people who are utilizing those devices. Another device that I think everyone's fairly familiar with is electric scooters. The state definition of a low-speed electric scooter is a device weighing less than 100 pounds with 2 or 3 wheels, handlebars, and a floorboard that can be stood upon while riding, that is powered by an electric motor and human power with a maximum speed of 10 miles per hour. It is not a moped or motor-driven cycle. So as you can see, that is specifically geared towards scooters that don't exceed 10 miles an hour. That's the only scooter definition provided by the state. They do not have a definition for any type of scooter that exceeds 10 miles an hour. So these are generally going to be the scooters that are made and marketed for children, but they must be ridden by an 18-year-old or by an adult. Electric scooters are not automatically permitted under state law, so a local ordinance would need to be enacted in order to authorize low-speed electric scooter use. If we chose to authorize low-speed electric scooter use, they would have to act in accordance with all the restrictions in place by the act. So that is, you can't operate it on a highway where the posted speed limit exceeds 35 miles an hour. Person must be 18 years of age or older, and it can be parked in the same manner and location as a bicycle. As I said, there's no state definition for an e-scooter exceeding 10 miles an hour. And in speaking with legal counsel on this, there may be an opportunity for counsel to define a local classification of scooter, since the state only defines a low-speed electric scooter. So that is the recommended course of action by Ride, Illinois, where a lot of the information on this presentation is derived, and also something of interest from in speaking with the Active Transportation Commission. If we did create another classification of scooter locally, the one recommendation would be that we maintain at least those restrictions that are in place for the low speed, specifically like 18 years and older. So cities may regulate conduct, speed, equipment, and age requirements. Park and forest preserve districts have similar regulatory authority. In speaking with the park district, I don't believe they have any specific ordinances governing their property over any of these devices on their property at this time. Forest preserve district, they have posted signage very sporadically along the trails. I believe we had settled on that it depends on the location that you're in, but that it's usually about 15 miles an hour is generally the posted limit on the trails around here. So the next couple of slides are going to be basically certain things that we've seen other municipalities regulate. It's not necessarily our recommendations of things that we need to regulate in terms of a local ordinance here, but just things that we've seen other places regulate. Some of those things are specific to rider conduct, requiring helmets for riders under 16, prohibiting mobile phone use while riding, prohibiting passengers unless the device is actually designed for multiple riders, requiring either parental oversight or parental responsibility for the actions of a minor, prohibiting reckless conduct and reckless riding, and yield requirements when approaching pedestrians. There's also speed and location regulations. Again, kind of touching on those shared use paths, local speed limit regulations. Ride Illinois does have guidance on this. They said 15 mile an hour speed limit would be the recommended speed limit for a heavily traveled or active path, and then 20 miles an hour for a path that doesn't have that much traffic on it. Other regulations, mandatory dismount zones in dense downtown areas, prohibiting e-motos on public property without license and registration, prohibiting all e-mobility devices on sidewalks, or applying a speed threshold if appropriate, designating permitted trail and path locations by signage, and restricting the high-powered devices to roadways only. Lastly, equipment. There can be lighting requirements, reflectors or reflective material requirements, audible warning, brakes capable of stopping within a defined distance, manufacturer, class label required on all e-bikes, and prohibiting like the modification or tampering of speed governors. So sometimes people will tweak their e-bike in order to make it go faster. This is just kind of recommendations from Ride Illinois. We pulled this from their website in terms of different locations. It's a lot to look at. We can kind of go through some of those things as we have further discussion. So from the police department's perspective, the goal here is really education and compliance. We would certainly want to education over hefty fines and penalties. I've seen other municipalities with a graduated enforcement mechanism, so a warning or a low initial fine for first-time violators, and then increasing penalties for repeat offenders. Again, the preference is to use local prosecution rather than criminal court tying up the state's attorney's office. A big part of this, I think, is education. We want this to be a jumping off point for our department and for the Active Transportation Commission to provide that public education prior to taking enforcement action and prior to the spring and summer riding seasons. So we want to partner with BTAC, we want to partner with the schools and bike shops, and really work on providing rules of the road and safety awareness initiatives. So again, some of the key takeaways: state law already permits most low-speed e-bikes under bicycle rules. This is not a proposal to reduce or limit any of those protections. Local regulation and public education can improve compliance and understanding. Local regulation is most impactful for e-scooters, the micro-mobility devices, and high-powered devices. Clear, simple rules improve compliance and officer safety, and balanced regulation protects riders, pedestrians, and motorists. So at this time, kind of looking to open it up for discussion, see what council's thoughts are on local regulation. Again, with regards to e-bikes specifically, we would be looking to craft an ordinance that is extremely similar to existing state statute and essentially just providing the department with a local regulation tool as opposed to having to cite people with state citations and send them to state court. With regards to the e-motos, those are the devices that are of primary concern. I know I've had conversations with the Active Transportation Commission routinely about those. And those devices, those unregulated devices, are definitely the area of concern where you've got riders going upwards of 35, 40 miles an hour, utilizing trails and paths, tearing up baseball fields and things like that. So those are the devices that I think likely need a higher level of scrutiny. So. And then, as I mentioned, I did bring the Active Transportation Commission with me. They're happy to come up and answer any questions as well. Don't be shy. Come up with you.
Nobody else?
Oh, if you want. Hi, I'm John O'Toole. I'm with the Active Transportation Committee. I'm also the e-scooter commuter during the summer. So.
I guess one thing I thought about the more I looked at this, because I see them constantly, I test drive cars all over the west side of town, so I see these things constantly, whether they're on sidewalks or in the street riding wheelies for a block or two, or just, you know, moving as fast as they can most of the time. I'd say a good 50% of them have helmets, especially on North Lincoln, and do look both ways before they cross the street. But there's other ones that have no regard whatsoever for what's going on. Strangely enough, they're the ones that have helmets on, like a motocross helmet on, and probably could do 30 or 40 miles an hour on some of them that I've seen. I think we should consider, when we talk about enforcement, not fining people, but make them do community service. Put them back out there in the public and make them learn from it, not just, hey, Mom, can I have $25? I need to pay my fine because I got caught, you know, driving downtown on a sidewalk. I really think, to me, that makes more sense than a monetary, you know, penalty for it. And then I really think the key to the whole thing is education. If we have to partnership with the school district, the park district, any way we can do as much education as we can, that to me will be the biggest way we can make this better and make it safer. Because I don't want us to wait to change stuff for this till somebody gets killed.
Yeah, a quick question of clarification here. Did I hear you correctly that for class 3 e-bikes, it's 16 plus, but for e-scooters that go maximum of 10 miles an hour, it's 18 plus?
You heard me correctly.
And that's by state?
Correct.
We can't change that?
We can't.
Okay.
But you can do a new classification technically to encompass the 10 to approximately 20 miles per hour scooter. St. Charles just passed a recent ordinance that created a new category for that scooter. And I will also say Illinois is working with Ride Illinois and the Secretary of State to define e-scooters because of kind of the discrepancy between the classification of e-bikes versus the low-speed scooters.
Okay, and so if I'm understanding that correctly, if we were to create like a Class 2 e-scooter or whatever, we would then be able to define the parameters of that. Is that?
We could. Again, we wouldn't want to make the restrictions lesser for the higher speed scooter than what are in place for the state. So we would at least probably need to follow those guidelines. I will say that from what I see, the biggest risk being here is we can impose local regulation. And as John mentioned, and as I mentioned, the state is actively working on potentially, creating some new classifications, creating some clarifications, fixing some of the problems that are in place with existing state law. And we might be back here in a few months asking to change things. But I think at this point, with what we've seen and with how slow that things can move at the state level, sometimes it's probably prudent to just advance a local ordinance at this time. And then if we need to amend it down the road, we do so.
No, it's just first off, thank you for bringing this forward. You're going to laugh. I did rent a Lime e-scooter recently in the West Loop of Chicago, where the main ridership's actually adults, not children, like in the West Loop. Completely terrifying.
You could use it.
185-pound man on a scooter going 25 miles an hour with 6-inch wheels. It is not fun, and especially if you're not wearing a helmet, like I was doing, and especially in Chicago where you're hitting puddles and everything. So so I stopped it after 3 blocks. I'm like, I'm done. That's my experience. But if I'm honest about it, I mean, the average the new car price is over $50,000 now. And I know if I was coming up the ranks again, I'm in my 20s, and I'm looking at a new car for $50,000 or an e-scooter that's going to cost me what, $2,000, $3,000, if that.
Honestly, for what would be considered legal, my scooter just meets the threshold on all points, and it was $800.
Right.
And it's a Segway, brakes, taillights, turn signals, very well built.
I was blown away the number of adults that were riding this thing, and then I just thought, this is a car price. So I think it's going to be more of a real thing, and I think it's just going to be kids soon. I think once people get to the next cycle of buying a new car, it's going to be like, whoa, I know for myself, I drive maybe more than 3 miles a week, maybe 4 times a week, if that, maybe only 3 times. So my point is, you need a helmet, you need all this stuff. So I'm assuming there's no objection to that. Is that correct? To having a helmet?
Yeah, so I know as a committee, we're definitely for at least the under 18. Illinois, as many people I know, is a no helmet law with motorcycles. So, enforcing that, I don't know if it's going to be necessarily popular. I mean, I'm in a crash helmet every single time I'm on. So, personally for that. Under 18, we're also in favor of requiring helmets for e-mobility devices as well.
My only, and I won't ask another question tonight, the only thing I will add is I think you don't need to wear a helmet when you ride one of these things. I implore you to ride one of these things because it's not if you're going to fall, it's when you're going to fall, based on my experience. So, thank you.
I wear a full mask because I would used to ride motorcycles all the time, and base going 20 miles an hour, if you're on a motorcycle or a bicycle or anything like that, you're going to tear yourself up pretty good. So.
What other municipalities, local ordinances, I've not seen helmet requirements for adults. I have seen them for 16 and under or under 16. That's been more common. And then I've also seen an encouragement, like municipalities encouraging individuals using these devices to wear helmets, but not necessarily requiring it. And I think the encouragement is the same guidance given by Ride Illinois.
It is
that they encourage riders to wear helmets, but that they don't recommend regulating it.
Yeah, all right, so I'll jump in. I think it feels like people are a little shy. I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I'm going to kind of let them off. First off, I like the enforcement scaling that you're proposing here. I do like the idea of taking it out of sort of the courtrooms and the punitive method and then going and instead bringing it kind of in town with education and then scaling upwards. I did like Alderman Wolf's idea of community service, kind of replacing, say, a fine, or maybe in tandem, because these are not cheap, and if a child is writing it, their parents are probably paying for it, so we want to internalize the enforcement mechanism to them. So I'd really like the enforcement structure that I heard here. It makes a lot of sense. Second, as far as safety goes, I think lights are key. I really do believe that ensuring both front-facing and rear-facing lights. I know a lot of e-bikes these days come with turn signals, but I don't know, who cares about the turn signals? It's more the rear-facing light and the forward-facing light so that you're not sort of disappearing in the dark, right, as you're going. I think that's going to be really important. And then I did like the sample ordinance you sent around as well. I think ensuring that the e-bikes in particular are off sidewalks and on roads is probably the appropriate place. That's why our speedo bikers are on the roads, because you can go fast and they're made for kind of going that speed. Keep the scooters and sort of kids on regular bikes on the sidewalks. But even, kids can ride on the street. If they're 16 and they're able to get on an e-bike, I think the street is the appropriate place for them, and enforcing those laws. I think that's a pretty important part of it, in my opinion. The last comment I'll make before I be quiet here is, I do think that as far as kind of our bike lanes go, our primary bike lane is that north-south Fox River Trail, which isn't ours, right? And also kind of, you're kind of going from, either from Aurora up to, up Elgin Way or back down, you're kind of going over a bunch. I would love to see some municipality, interjurisdictional cooperation on this as well. I know the state's looking at stuff, but that corridor in particular could probably use focused attention. I know that widening that bike path, I'm sure, while not cheap, could also provide some relief in that capacity. All that said, I mean, e-bikes are here to stay. I was at Memorial Park today, and there was just a pile of e-scooters and e-bikes and stuff just all piled on top of each other as the kids were going nuts, and it was great. It was wonderful. And I think exactly as Jim has said, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more adults adopting this as well. These are not children, so these are pedestrian people movers. If we can get people to work, from work to the grocery store, from the grocery store. Someday I'm going to get that rad wagon they sell down there, and I'll be able to go to Trader Joe's and load it up with all my bougie food one of these days. So I think they're here to stay, and I think the more seriously we take this and the more infrastructure we build, the better.
And thank you for bringing up the sample ordinance I sent around. That is the Ride Illinois recommended ordinance for municipalities, which comes from Rolling Meadows. They worked and crafted that in partnership with Ride Illinois. Again, the e-bike legislation that's in there is almost verbatim state statute. It's very similar, and then it addresses the e-moto issue. That ordinance does not have any sort of scooter regulation. However, they do have that on the books already. That just wasn't a part of that ordinance that they passed.
Yeah, it also didn't have lighting requirements on there as well.
Yeah.
I just wanted to a bit on the e-bikes on sidewalks side of it. I'm a very regular e-bike rider, often for commuting purposes. In fact, I will note I often do have to get up on the sidewalk to actuate the crosswalk button, because most traffic lights aren't equipped to recognize a cyclist is there. So just maybe one aspect of enforcement to consider with that. I kind of like the idea of more focusing on riding speed in those cases, because an e-bike, if you turn off the motor, and that's part of the operation of an e-bike, if you turn off the motor, it operates just like a standard bicycle at that point, and you can't even really go that fast. So emphasizing behaviors there is, I think, another key aspect of it. Just to say, there's going to be a lot of corner cases, especially as we continue to develop our bike network. I definitely appreciate the need to also make sure that folks aren't screaming down the sidewalk and pushing folks aside, because I've seen that myself as well. So I think it ties a lot into this of actually how we're going to be moving forward with this. Also, as a strange aside, have you also heard about electric unicycles? Have you seen those in operation?
Wheels, unicycles.
I have those on here. Those go like 60 miles an hour. They're insane.
The unicycles are surprisingly powerful.
Yeah.
They're outclassed for sure. They're like 2,000 watts or 5,000 watt power or something like that.
Yeah.
They're insane.
I have a friend of mine who doesn't live around here who has one, and it's terrifying. But I imagine that falls under E-moto in this case.
I think by classification of the power, it would.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of them, like one wheel, if you're familiar with the snowboard, technically their top speed is 20 miles an hour and their motors are only rated for 750. So they are actually built and designed to follow classification for class 2. So,
Oh, wow. Okay.
that's where, you know, Illinois is working on, with Right Illinois, kind of a catch-all bucket because it's something else, I guess. So,
Yeah. So it's definitely a very evolving industry. So making sure we're keeping up with that as well.
Yeah, and the example that you gave with the crosswalk, I think that's kind of a perfect example of where an officer's discretion comes into play. They're going to be able to see that behavior. It's really that behavior where, like you said, where somebody's screaming down a sidewalk at 20 miles an hour and pedestrians are having to bail out of the way. That sort of behavior is what the concern is.
I will say I did ride an e-bike up in Wisconsin around Green Lake, and I did find a stretch where it's really long. In one spot, I got it to 21 miles an hour. And that was kind of terrifying. Kevin?
Could you explain a little more about what the sort of parental responsibility component of, I know on one of the slides, you'd share that we could include in the ordinance that it would be, parents would be on the hook, basically liable. I should try to find the language exactly, but can you sort of explain the thought behind that, how that enhances your enforcement ability versus, say, run-of-the-mill?
Sure, and I think you touched on it already with regards to fines, that the parents are going to kind of be on the hook for the fine anyway, if their child cited. That's something that I've seen in another ordinance. I'll have to try to dig up which ordinance that came from. But that was, you know, that's specifically holding like the parents, if they buy their child a device that the child has really no business being on or no business operating, there was a specific offense for that. It's kind of like we have in our local ordinances a curfew violation, and you have the fine where you would cite the minor for a curfew violation for being out after curfew. But there's also a similar ordinance for curfew violation where the parent would be responsible for it if they knowingly allowed their child to go out and break curfew after hours.
Yeah, so it gives you an enforcement mechanism for the parents who are buying these super mega powered whatevers and sending their kids out to tear up HC Storm's lawn and occasionally my lawn. Okay.
But they like the dirt hills next door. Those are good. Alderman White, hand up.
Yeah, sorry. I think most of it has already been covered. I just want to thank the chief and the member from the BTAC committee for coming in and presenting on this. The key for me in the discussions I've heard is that this gives them a way of going after the really egregious people, really, going crazy, doing the 30 miles an hour, and not necessarily worried about Dustin hitting a crosswalk button. I think that's the key, and I think that's what our constituents would like to hear. It is a real challenge, though, because you do have low-powered two-wheel scooters that you get 2 and 3 people on, and you do have things like one-wheeled scooters and unicycles and all kinds of craziness. So I think it will continue to change over time, but I think this is a great start. So I applaud you. Thanks again for bringing a little education to it as well.
Thank you. Thanks for putting this together and presenting it. And I know Steve from Boji Bikes is back there and he's very passionate about it. And, what I hear from the penalty standpoint, I do like the gradual penalty and also making the parents responsible for that. Part of what kind of pauses me with the community services, how are we going to, how is the staff really going to manage that? And I see the penalties as an opportunity to invest into more education. and get more opportunities out there. Kind of similar to what we do with the drunk driving, let's put the money to good use. So I would really be a proponent for, the penalties and using that towards the education program and towards the active transportation and their initiatives of what they're trying to accomplish.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys, I got a lot of thoughts in my mind. Two things. First off, following up on what Jen had shared. Right now, through the city, do we do community service for youth violators at all, or is that only like through the probation officers down in the King County?
So we have a station adjustment program for juveniles specifically, where we can handle low-level juvenile offenses in-house without referring them to juvenile court services.
Okay.
So that does exist. Sometimes, usually there's an online education component to that. Sometimes we also include a community-based service activity.
And so if we wanted to have a community service sort of component to this, we'd probably have to kind of develop what that might look like if this proves to be.
Yeah, and I think it would be a lot easier for us to develop something specifically targeted to minors as opposed to including adult population in that.
Okay. Second question, shifting to the e-scooter question. Right now we have our 10 mile an hour sort of definition from the state and all that. We talked about possibly expanding, either coming up with a second class or expanding it. What are some of the criteria we should be looking at for faster, more powerful scooters? What's kind of the upper range of power / speed? What are...
Defer to me then. From what I've been researching, it really makes sense to have these classified along with the Class 2. Right now, the rules are 750-watt motor and a 20-mile-per-hour top speed limit. So again, the speed is probably what's the most of concern. Yeah. So.
And with the e-scooters, does other hardware, do the brakes and things like that, are they as big a factor as they are, say, on bikes?
They are already regulated in the Illinois state, right, with taillights and headlights?
The low-speed electric scooter is regulated. We would apply those sorts of regulations to a new classification if we went that route. And that's what I've seen too, is 20 miles an hour being that upper threshold for speed from the one or two municipalities where I've seen that enacted.
And on an e-bike, I understand sort of, you can upgrade brakes, you can get sort of electrically assisted brakes, you can get, disc brakes over rim brakes, blah, blah, blah. On scooters going 20 miles an hour, is that a practical sort of thing? Like, do they practically have upgraded brakes that are possible, or are the wheels too small? Or
what I have seen, and it's going to range based on even e-bikes, you can get stuff that's like Temu special that probably are not, appropriate for street use or any usage. But generally speaking, the scooters that I've seen, they are really well built, and they can handle the speeds and brake with, authority.
Yeah, and to give you the intention of my question, I'd hate to write into a regulation that you have to have brakes that can stop you within 4 inches, but they don't exist, right? Or they're so cost prohibitive. So that's kind of why I'm asking that question. Like, what's the actual reality of the technology? As we're thinking about it.
And I would tend to agree with you. Again, these were just kind of discussion points that we put out there. Enforcement of something along those lines would be almost impossible too. So it would.
Yeah. Well, you catch the kid with it, and then you look and say, "Oh, you don't have the right brakes," and you can slap another fine on them, or
exactly. They're
plant 4 more trees or whatever we end up doing.
Because there's electric assisted brakes, and like mine are drum, and they work perfectly well. Some of them are disc. Some of the disc models don't work as well as the drums as well. So it just really depends on the device. At the 20 mile an hour threshold, I think most of the units from what I've been just it's blinking on me. There you go. It would seem to be a safe speed where most braking devices would be able to handle that.
I know I said I wouldn't answer their question, so it's not a question, this is more of a statement. So having just had this experience with the e-scooter, and trust me, very well built, I did like it. However, the laws of physics do come into play, right? And when you're on when you're going 20, 25 miles an hour on an electric scooter with 6-inch wheels, and if I'm cantilevering as a 185-pound man on top, and I'm not wearing a helmet, if I get into an accident, the possibility of me dying is pretty high, if we're honest about it, right? So my question is it really that big a deal to say you got to wear a helmet if you ride one of these things? Can we do it? Does that cause any problems?
Yeah, there's certainly no restriction that I'm aware of. We can consult with legal counsel on that, but I would think that we could enact that if we chose to. I don't know how popular.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I think the issue with the helmet thing is the non-motorcycle helmet state. So if you're not going to require it on motorcycles and bicycles, the e-bike people feel attacked.
Gotcha.
I think you also run into the challenges too then of, people are riding these things a great distance across jurisdictional lines. So you get to Batavia, strap on your helmet, get down to North Aurora, you can take it back off again and put it on your saddlebag. I think there's challenges like that would be problematic.
I have two comments for the helmet. I thought we were talking about possibly requiring helmets for the youth, like 18 or under 18. Are we saying that we don't want that at all? No helmets at all? I'm just trying to understand what direction council's given.
I think under 18 is fair to require it for kiddos, but
not adults. Okay. I also support that for under 18. The other comment that I had, glad that this is coming up because I've heard it a lot from the community of residents concerned about children not having any restrictions and not following rules of the road. So I'm glad that this is being addressed. So I just wanted you to walk me through a potential scenario. My 13-year-old, has a e-scooter, and we put in place the Rolling Meadows framework that they have, that ordinance. And they're on the sidewalk going 10 miles an hour on the e-scooter. What violations would they be committing? Like if you stop them, just so that you can walk me through, would it be because they're not 18 and older, since it's a low, since it's e-scooter?
So the low-speed electric scooter is permitted on sidewalks. So if it's 10 miles an hour or under, would be allowed to ride on a sidewalk. So the violation that you're looking at there is obviously the age, that he's not 18.
And for that violation, we're looking at penalty for the parents and possibly tandem community service if council gives you that direction. Right, minor.
So again, I think that's one of the unsettled things here in terms of like direction from council. If that would be something that would be a warning or a low initial fine, which was kind of the recommendation of Ride Illinois, or if we want to go with something a little bit different in terms of a community service aspect.
Personally, I like the gradual, first offense warning, second offense possibly fine or community service. I like the idea of having both, especially if it's a minor, to make the parents accountable and the minor accountable. Okay, so then next scenario, if they're going over 10 miles an hour and it's a 13-year-old on the sidewalk, then what would be the violations that they would be doing?
At this point, we would be defining our own classification of scooter that goes over 10 miles an hour. So that would be dependent upon the regulations that are put into place.
Possibly the helmet, the age restriction, and the speed, right? Okay, thanks. Just wanted to put it out there. I know the public's watching and they're thinking these things. Thank you.
My question, and I know we've discussed this in the past, but it really does come down to, like, day to day, how likely are we going to be able to, you know, if we put something in, like an ordinance, how likely are we going to be able to enforce it? I'm thinking summertime, downtown Batavia, Shumway, you know, and there's just kids everywhere on scooters, on e-scooters. And they're not wearing helmets. They're often doubled up on a scooter or, you know, with their friends, and there's a whole posse of them. And, you know, as a mom, I always get a little anxious watching kids, you know, but as also a mom, I'm like, I'm so happy they're outside. I'm so happy they are out exploring our downtown with their friends and not just sitting at home on a device. And so I'm just like trying to imagine whatever we put into place, enforcement. Like, are we just going to have a police officer sitting down at Shumway and Wilson and just like handing out tickets to every 5 minutes to kids who come through? Because that's, or are we, like as Alderperson White said, looking to put it into an ordinance into place that when we see, you know, very concerning conduct in town, that you guys have the ability to pull somebody over. And I guess that's just what I'm trying to ask council, like, what are we looking for here? You know, so.
I feel like education and compliance are what we would like to figure out, so that way, you know, people know what's expected of their kids when they're on these, what's expected of the adults when they're on these. You know, I'm sure I'll break an ordinance if I get a 1500 watt one, 72 volts, it'll be fun. I'll see how fast I can go. But I really think that it has to be about education and compliance. We can write all the laws we want and people don't follow them. It's just, if we can try to do this and be ahead of it and educating them, then we're not going to be down here reacting when somebody gets killed.
Right, which obviously we don't want. But I mean, it's state law that you're not supposed to ride bicycles on sidewalks as an adult, but people do it for their own safety all the time. I mean, getting through downtown Batavia on a bicycle, especially if it's when a busy traffic, it is not a safe place to be on a bicycle. And I know people, I'm sure Dustin does too, who commute to Fermilab on their bicycle, and they've been clipped multiple times by cars on Wilson because getting across the bridge, getting through those intersections, they are not built for bicycles. Number one, we don't have the space. I mean, this is a very old town. It doesn't have width on the roads to make bike lanes. And we've also prioritized vehicles for parking spots instead of bike lanes through our downtown. But we're not enforcing bicycles that are on our sidewalks. So I'm just saying, even if we make an ordinance, I don't see us enforcing things like helmets or people being on sidewalks and things like that. So I am really asking, are we just putting an ordinance in place just so we can say we have it, but it's not really going to do anything?
Yeah, to kind of answer that question directly, what I'm looking for is kind of guidance for parents or people who want to commute, right? Like say, I don't know what a good e-bike is or what's going to be good. Or if we have some regulation and some, you know, an ordinance in place that tells me, okay, don't get something over 750, don't get, you know, something where the pedals don't move, you know, whatever, A, B, C, D, right? Also compliance kind of by the sellers. I want the sellers to know what's going to be good. Kind of looking at the Bougie Bikes guy there who does a great job. But like, so they know what to sell, what not to sell, what to tell people who buy new bikes, what not to tell people new bikes. I think an ordinance does that for us. And then the final component, the last component, I would never ask the police not to fully enforce the laws to the best of their abilities, but I mean, I don't expect them to like get every little, you know, every teenager on a scooter, right? And I don't think that'd be an efficient use of police time anyway, right? But instead, when we do have kind of the egregious ones, we have several different mechanisms to punish, right? So not only did you run the stop sign, you also were on a scooter that was this bad, that was ABC, and we can kind of then build a punishment repertoire that's going to give them some options. So personally, that's kind of how I view an ordinance working in our town.
Yeah, I mean, totally understand where you're coming from, Leah, and I appreciate the question. And again, to answer directly, but I think just quickly and succinctly, this starts at home. I think everyone knows that. The vast majority of these things, as we sit today, are kids under the age of 18, or I would say mainly under the age of 16, are a lot of these kids racing around. Why? Because they don't have access to a car yet. So, you know, that's a lot of the e-moto stuff, but I think the education piece goes a long way. And honestly, the ordinance is so that they have some teeth, so that if it does come to, hey, we have a certain kid who we've picked up 2-3 times now, what do we do now? Rather than, you know, of course we can, you know, I'm sure there's actual laws, state laws that he or she is breaking at that point, but gives it a little teeth to give some enforcement. But I agree with everybody. I think our constituents and everybody in this town does not want the Dustin of the world, especially the commuter, you know, going up on the sidewalk, you know, going across our town because of some of the things that Alderwoman Lehman said. So, you know, I think, yeah, obviously this starts at the parents. I think there's, you know, if there's ways to, of a mechanism there, sounds like we already kind of have a blueprint with some other ordinance we have, but it just gives that little tool in the tool chest for the police.
Yeah, you know, just a quick note. So I think this is step one. I mean, these are going to get adopted more. There are going to be more of them on the road. This is just the beginning of the legislation around it. As mentioned previously, more adults will be buying this, and they already are, quite frankly, as cars get more and more expensive, egregiously expensive. Also, you know, I will point out, the speeds we're talking about, they're fast, man. I mean, I don't know how many of you like ride bikes. If I'm going 12 miles an hour on a bike, I'm like, you know, it's shaking, right? So when we say I'm going 20 to 25 miles an hour, like on this little scooter, that is quick, man. And you need some sort of legislation. I think
Why are you going that fast if you don't feel safe?
I'm sorry, what?
Why are you going that fast if you don't feel safe?
I'm not, well, I don't go that fast, but
it's an education thing. That's the place that. When I get up here, we'll talk about that in a second.
yeah, so anyways, that's my thought.
Laura? And then
I just wanted to point out that I think a lot of times when we're thinking about enforcement, we're thinking about our officers being in vehicles, and we do have bicycle patrols, and they can go to the areas where, you know, maybe by the quarry during the summer where they see the activity, and look at that as opportunities to educate before they enforce and try to get people to adapt to what the new rules are.
I just wanted to remind everyone that we do have a complete streets policy. So when we do any street rehab program, even resurfacing, we look at that to make sure that we have all the adequate facilities on there. Like when we redid Millview, and we still have the rest of that to go to put those bike lanes in there and try and see what we can do. When we got the funding for Prairie Street, we had to make it work. We had the difficult decision of taking parking off one side so we could get the bike lane in there to fit. So as we go through town, we are accommodating that. If there's any other questions, you can email me. I have to go pick up my not drivable daughter yet. She has one of those e-scooters too, but it's too far. So.
Okay. On paper.
Quick notes. For one, just my own experience riding an e-bike, 12 miles per hour isn't too bad. Like 20 is for me, we're about where it starts to get a little shakier. And you really only get that when you're going downhill. That's not even the motor helping at that point. Just pointing that out for me. Secondly, though, is the state looking at changing the e-scooter age requirement for those lower speed ones? And if so, would we then likely mirror that when that happens?
So I don't have any insights into what exactly they're crafting, but I believe that they are looking at applying a little more common sense to some of that legislation.
Okay. Good to know.
just one more comment. So I know I had brought up the kids in my last comment, in the summer, but during the rest of the year and during the weekdays, it's adults on e-bikes, I think, that I see the most of in downtown. Even today, coming up, what is that, First Street up by the library, up that hill, there was a family, 2 parents, 2 kids, 2 dogs walking up the hill and on the sidewalk, and coming behind them is a guy on his e-bike. And he did not get off his bike. He kind of came up behind them and basically was asking them to get out of his way. And so it's stuff like that I also see happen regularly in downtown Batavia. And he wasn't going fast. But so in my mind, we're talking about like 2 very, very, very different things. We're talking about kids on e-scooters for their own safety and for the safety of others. And then we're talking about people who are using e-bikes for transportation, and trying to set up a new world where bikes and cars and pedestrians all live together nicely. And I think that's what we're trying to hash out here. But it really is 2 different discussions. And I don't know if we need, I think, somehow for that to show up in an ordinance, I think, very clearly, like.
I'll go if I'm allowed here. I got a bunch of things. You guys are all saying good things. I love this. I'll start with number 1. Excellent presentation. It said everything that I've been preaching for years. We have laws. Follow the laws and you're easy. Early on in the presentation or discussions, you're talking about the e-motos. The e-motos are the ones ruining for the e-bikes, and I'm kidding, trying to promote for the e-bikes here, but there is a wattage threshold that no one's brought up here today, and it's somewhere around 3,500 watts. That's what I believe Ride Illinois is working on the state with, specifically for those e-motos and scooters. Once you get over 3,500 watts, you're a class 5 road vehicle, same as motorcycle. I can point out all the kids riding their dirt bikes downtown, how you could find that out if they're actually breaking those laws and what they're going to change. Another point I want to make, and do you guys know why there's 750 watts, why they picked that number? It's 1 horsepower. Do you know that little, what do you call, mini bike you had when you were 14? You know what that was, 49cc? That's 6.5 horsepower. I get torque is delivered differently with electric than gas, but we're talking about all this stuff, and I don't know if anyone realizes the equation behind it. So that was 2 wattage, 1 good presentation. Education, just like a couple of you guys have talked on. We'd love to be a big part of that. We throw a tent out, Education Day, maybe a sticker for your bike if you passed a quiz or something for the kids. There's got to be a way that we could take schools and bike shops and our awesome community and say, hey, let's tell the kids to stop acting like jerks on the road, because they don't even know it. They don't have licenses. They don't know you got to turn left. They don't know any of that. Sorry to point at you about the speed thing, but that's my whole thing is just because it can doesn't mean you should. And if you ride at top speed for any sizable amount of time, you get like 10% of what they advertise battery-wise. No active user is going to want to eat up all that range. But there are jerks out there driving fast. Everything stated over here was good. I like the idea of a lot of the add-ons, the parental oversight, helmets, no phone use, no multiple passengers. Pick whatever you want, but educate, give them a grace period, right? Starting spring break, you can come on down to the police station here and take your e-bike safety quiz. And then May 1st, rules are in effect, or when school's out. So I have a couple things like that there. And then I guess I probably forgot the other 3 or 4 things I was making because you guys had a lot of good conversation. But keep it up, and I'll always be a resource. I guess that's all I got for you.
I just want to make a comment that's actually not about e-bikes. I just think it's important to note sometimes when we see good behavior, this is again where Chief Flowers has done a great job of going out into the community and engaging sort of experts that we have that are maybe not part of our government, not part of our system. So I just want to thank you, Chief Flowers, for engaging with the various folks in our town. We saw it before with the Kratom and THC issue, and we're seeing it again here with the e-bike issue. I think this is exactly what community policing looks like. So I want to make sure we say that out loud. So thank you very much.
Okay, so do we want to give direction to where we think this should go? Do we want to try to mirror what's out there, what got shared with us, and then be ready if state law changes to go back and add to it or remove from it. I think that's what we should do. I mean, to start with, I don't think we should fine anybody off the beginning. We need to probably for 6 months or a year, do education and really push that. And, if we do see, egregious behavior, stop them, cite them with, warning, however you want to handle it. And that way they start to learn that that's the reality of the way we treat those in town.
Yeah, so to summarize kind of my understanding in terms of council's direction, going to work on something largely similar to the model ordinance that was presented from Rolling Meadows, include some sort of helmet requirement for youth, potentially look at a parental responsibility component, and then also there's interest in adding that higher speed classification of scooter. Does that sound about correct?
I would just say, I don't want to completely eliminate their ability to give a monetary fine, because some people just don't quit. They don't learn.
If it's second or third time.
Warnings don't matter.
Yeah, that would be fine. But I think to start off with, to really roll this out, I think warnings is a better way to do it.
I agree, and I think that's how they'll do it.
But after the third time or something,
if we take the teeth completely away of saying you can't fine them ever, but.
Our officers always have the discretion to issue a warning in lieu of a citation, and I'm sure that they would make the appropriate decision.
Right.
I think Kevin also mentioned lights, adding the light requirement for everybody, or was it just youth?
Yeah, I mean, I think on e-bikes in particular, I think lights are vital. I think scooters too, but I do think the lighting component is a really important part of this, especially if we are expecting them to ride on the streets primarily. So
completely agree. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your help.
All right, and then we'll move on to city council updates. Any additional project status? Okay. Okay. Awesome. And then anybody have any other business they want to bring up? Okay, I heard it. So moved. Do we have a second? Second.